Ahoy, and welcome to Swords and Starships. I am your host, Captain Garrett, and this is a review of The Boys, Season 3, Episodes 1 through 4. There may be some light spoilers in this, so if you haven't caught up on The Boys and you want to take a look at it, I recommend it. Pause this video and come back because it's a great season and a mostly good series, and I do recommend it. So let me just wind the clock back a little bit and talk about my experience with the show. I like season one, and I particularly liked the first 4 or 5 episodes of season one. Really great concept, and it was promising. Even though I felt that the first season kind of lost the plot a little bit, uh, it ended with a nice season closer and a nice hook for future episodes, and I was in. I was in. I'm a huge fan of Watchmen. I read the comic, I read the graphic novel, and I really like the Zack Snyder film Watchmen. I know a lot of people find it kind of dour, and there's some critiques of it that I have some agreement with, but generally speaking, I really enjoyed it. In fact, it has great rewatch value for me. And the basic premise is, what if costumed and superhero beings really did exist, and we retold American history in the 20th century from that lens of these costume heroes exist, and would the world be a better place or a worse place? And what would they be like? And one of the most fascinating things I think about the Watchmen, the Watchmen comic and the Watchmen film, is that it kind of suggests that aside from superheroes that are deeply flawed people that do bad things, it sort of supposes that even the good things the superheroes did might have altered history in a way that actually made things worse. And I always really enjoyed that dimension of it, just the how good intentions can have unintended consequences, or things we wish had gone a different way actually gave us a worse future than we would have expected. And that's a very serious take on this. That's a very serious critique of both sort of 80s American culture, but more broadly, more specifically, I should say, a critique of the idea of the superhero. And that's your drama. That's your drama take. What I like about The Boys is it's more like your kind of dramedy parody take. It's kind of a tongue in cheek takedown of the idea of superheroes. The way I hear it, the creator of the comics is not a fan of the idea of superheroes. Um, but I will say this: the show understands superheroes and the language of superheroes, and in many ways, it's kind of a parody of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC universe, the DC Cinematic Universe. It's a pretty great parody of both. What it actually kind of winds up being, though, is a parody of us as a culture and our obsession with media, social media, and just the weird kind of narcissistic direction that social media has been taking our culture in, and more than any of that, it's such a brilliant critique of celebrity, and it couldn't come at a better time, especially in the wake of things like the Oscar slap. You know, imagine if Will Smith, far from being a flawed human, was also superpowered, and so was Chris Rock. That could have been a much different scenario. So it's quite the critique of our behavior as people and our fascination with celebrity. And just imagine if our celebrities were superheroes and we credited them with all these good deeds. Many of them were just staged or fake. It's pretty great. And the premise of the show, it begins centered on Huey, who's kind of just an average Joe, everyday guy, and his girlfriend becomes collateral damage when A Train, the equivalent of the Flash, just like powers through her and kills her, and it's horrifying, and he decides he wants justice, and so he joins this ragtag group called the Boys, and they're basically led by this ex-CIA, uh, I'm assuming assassin, because he kind of has It's been a while since I saw the first couple seasons, but essentially, yeah, he did dirty work for the CIA. Butcher, played by the brilliant Carl Urban, and they're great foils to each other, these two characters. But yeah, Huey is your everyman. He's trying to get justice, and Butcher is your grizzled, tough as nails ex CIA human who has an axe to grind with superheroes. He hates them all, and he wants them to be held accountable. And it's a fantastic premise, and it carries the first half of the first season brilliantly. It's sort of a show about, okay, how does this clever, scrappy group of humans figure out ways to outmaneuver superheroes' powers? There's this great bit about how they capture the Invisible Man, and he's they capture the Invisible Man, but he has impenetrable skin. So they have to get this explosive device inside of him. And I'm just going to say they get creative. As you can see, it's an irreverent show. What bothered me, though, about the first couple seasons is right about the first half of the season, we kind of lost the plot. And it became less and less about the pursuit of stopping the superheroes and more about the kind of melodrama between the characters and the melodrama, I think, between Butcher and Homelander. This Homelander, who's basically Superman in the show, is responsible for the death of Butcher's wife. So they've got this beef, but I felt like too much of the show became about that. Season 2, I felt was a total fail. It just became this constant melodrama about how the boys are all broken up and the band won't get back together, and the plot just meandered. It didn't really go anywhere, and I was like, I want to see it. I want to see what this show was in the beginning. I want to see a show about this scrappy, tough as nails group of regular guys with some, they have a certain set of skills and they fight dirty against superheroes who have all the advantages. And I just want to see that. That's a great concept. And I felt like it didn't even get enough time in the first season. Now, in like late seasons, I can understand being like, okay, well, we gotta inject something new into the story and keep it interesting, and that's fine. But I felt like in the middle of season 1, you kind of fall off of the main premise of the show. So I was out. I was not going to check out season 3. I was pretty much done with it. I was seeing some signs that the third season was looking pretty good, and I was hearing some people online talk about it was a pretty good show. And Film Threat did reviews of it with Chris Gore. It's a great YouTube channel, by the way, Film Threat. And they kind of talked me into watching it. So I'm watching it, and I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised, not least because the show is back to what it's supposed to be doing. It's about the boys stopping superheroes, and the stakes are higher, and the game is more interesting and more fun now. They threw in this wonderful little twist, which I did not see coming, and it was it's a really smart plot device. It's basically now there is a drug, I believe called Compound V as opposed to Compound B, and this compound allows you to have a normal person to have superpowers for 24 hours. Now, what's fantastic about this is the character of Butcher, who is now essentially abusing this drug because he needs it to beat the superheroes, also kind of hates himself for it. And I really enjoy this dynamic of the show because he absolutely hates Supes. He hates these super beings that don't deserve these powers and are unaccountable to anyone. And he draws a hard line. He wants all of them gone. It's a pretty he's kind of a nihilistic character in some ways, and it's part of what makes him so charming. He's just such a dogged, determined, take no prisoners guy. And now he's using their own powers against them. And you can Carl Urban's performance is so good because you can just see the self-loathing just coming off of him in every scene. He hates himself for stooping to this level. And it also brings up a really interesting question. Up until this point, he felt quite justified in his prejudice against all super beings, even the good ones he hates. He doesn't believe any of them should exist. But what does it say about him if now he, if only for a short time, is becoming one of them? So I really like that dynamic. They've introduced a couple new soups like Soldier Boy, who is effectively Captain America, and it's a parody of Captain America that's pretty pretty amazing. He literally is the most jingoistic character, obviously. Um, One word I will say, there's been some speculation about just how woke is this season going to be? Is it going to be an eye roll? And look, the whole show's kind of an eye roll. It's got the most um, obvious takes on a lot of political situation. I think it's fair to say the writers lean. I think it's fair to say they lean left, so they have a lot of fun at with MAGA culture and that sort of thing, which is, I'm so used to it in everything now that it's going to be in pretty much everything. But what I do like about the show is they really make fun of everyone, and they actually, I think, whatever your political leanings are, if you're watching this show, uh, they're going to they're going to shit on one of your darlings. I promise you. Um, I gotta say, one of my favorite. This is absolutely one of my favorite gags of the show. So they go to this superhero theme park, sort of a Universal Studios type place, but it's dedicated to the superheroes, and for Pride Month. Well, it's not just for Pride Month. I think there's a character in the show that's gay. I forget the exact circumstances, but they have basically the whole thing is just draped in the rainbow flag, and they're selling, and it's all the most virtue signaling stuff, and it's just like, and they're just oozing all of their support for LGBT culture and all the other darling causes, and it's just nauseating because it's so fake. It's like they don't really care. It's just a corporation pandering and just trying to get attention for being so virtuous. And it just reminded me of literally what Disney and all these companies during Pride Month are like. None of them would dare put a pride flag on their website in like Saudi Arabia or Russia, but they just drape themselves in the rainbow flag here at the United States, and just can't shut up about how much they support the LGBT community. And I say this as a bi man. It's like, please stop. Stop celebrating me. I don't need it. Okay. I just want to live my life and have a good life and find a partner I'm happy with, whatever whatever sex that turns out to be. It's not important. I don't really want all of these companies advocating on my behalf, not least because they're not really advocating. They don't give a crap. They don't give a crap what happens to gay people in Saudi Arabia. They would, just go look at their websites in other countries. You won't see a pride flag. So it's just funny. It's like, and the show takes that down so beautifully. It's like, look at, they literally can't find enough surfaces to put the rainbow flag on. And it's like, yeah, this is, so they make fun of all sides of the culture. And my favorite thing that they're always critiquing is the media culture. It's like our social media culture of narcissism. It's like if Spider-Man were real, Peter Parker would be an obnoxious TikToker. It's like that's the reality we live in. Gee, it's been a long time since I haven't read the new comics. He probably is a TikToker in the actual comics. Never mind. So yeah, they make fun of all sides of our culture, and we kind of deserve it. We need to laugh at ourselves a little bit. We take things a little too seriously, and you know, I I fully admit they triggered me a couple of times when I was watching the show, only because I'm so shell shocked from everything else. But I have to say, you know what? I've Chris Gore and Alan Ing on Film Threat really kind of talked me down on this. They're like, look, they're having fun with all of us, and I was like, you know what? Good. I'm glad because that's what I miss. That's why I love South Park. It's why I love Family Guy. It's like those shows, you know, yeah, they might come from a certain political leaning, but they made fun of all of us because frankly, if you're human, you deserve to have to laugh at yourself once in a while. There's none of us uh and that's kind of the point of the show, right? It's like superheroes think that, you know, their shit don't stink. They think that they are entitled to all of this power and all of this adulation, whether they deserve it or not. And that's kind of it's really a critique on celebrity, and it's a brilliant, brilliant one, as I mentioned before. So the comedy in the show is great. The plot is back on track. It's very simple. There's a great through line, which is that Butcher is there may be a weapon that can kill Homelanders, is effectively the Superman of this world, and he's getting more monstrous by the day. And the the sheer ticking clock urgency of the show is great too, because Homelander has reached a point where he's becoming less and less controllable. And there is a moment in episode 3, I believe, when he kind of gets away with something that effectively takes the last checks on his power away, and he's in total control of the situation now, and it's scary and it's great. So there's a great ticking clock. There is urgency. There was no sense of urgency in season 2. It really did feel like these characters are just putting around and fighting with each other. It was so boring. I can't overstate that. I really despise season 2. I was out of the show after season 2. I was like, you know what? They had an idea. They gave up on it. But it's back. It really is. The through line is there might be a weapon to kill Homelander. We are running out of time. Things are getting worse by the day. They're getting more dangerous by the day. And they're on this quest. The boys are on a quest to get this weapon. I love it. That's great. That's a great setup for the story. And then you got the twist of the temporary superpowers. And there's some great dramatic notes in it too, because there's the dynamic of Butcher has this sort of surrogate father-son relationship with his late wife's son, also the son of Homelander, who is now an orphan. And, the kid, I believe the kid's name is Ryan. Yes. So the kid's name is Ryan, and he's kind of been chatting with Butcher when the season opens, and it's clear that Butcher's kind of taken him under his wing, and the kid is just starving for affection and a parent figure. And he's kind of latched on to Butcher, and you can see there's this resistance in Butcher to actually. It's like Butcher wants to be a father figure, but he's resisting it. And the obvious surface level reasons are clearly that he doesn't feel like he's a good influence for the kid. He's got other priorities. He knows he's a piece of shit, and he kind of doesn't want to ruin the kid, but he also feels bad for him. But what I really like is the kind of unstated implication that one element of this is that even though he's got a soft spot for Ryan, Ryan is at the end of the day a soup. He is super powered, and Butcher hates superhumans. And so there's this implication that no matter how much he likes the kid, he kind of hates what the kid is, and it repulses him. And it's pretty heart-wrenching at some parts. So, and even there's a little subplot with Frenchie and his girlfriend. They're thinking about making a break to get away from the boys and live their own life. And so there's this beautiful little romance story, and it's set in a world where we don't know how that's going to turn out. So the subplots are pretty good. And yeah, the action's good. Yeah, I will say I do kind of agree with Alan Ng on Film Threat. His take on it. He doesn't like violence, and it's a super violent show. And Chris Gore's counterpoint was it's pretty silly violence. It's pretty caricature violence, and I really thought that was interesting. It's true. The violence on the show is way over the top to the point where I actually don't find it that it doesn't really affect me that much because it's so kind of fake. But there's a point to it, which is, and this is one of the things I like, when you actually read comics and, you're in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the action, the violence is always stylized in this way that is, it's clean. It's fun to watch, right? It's fun to watch these characters beating each other up. A lot of action movies do this too. A lot of action movies stylize the violence in a way where it just looks cool, right? And what's interesting about The Boys is it's essentially postulating a world in which superheroes are real, and when they take someone apart with their superpowers, it's usually an ugly sight you don't want to see. And that's such a great little element, because one of the things that this show is all about critiquing is the glamorization of things, the glamorization of celebrity, the glamorization of superheroes, the glamorization of movies and social media culture. And so it's fitting, I think, that the violence in this show is, it's always surprising the way that someone dies in this show. Even when you know someone's about to get splattered, they always do it in a way that's just a little surprising. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess that would happen if that superhero met that situation. So it's a lot of, so it has a point to make. So I don't mind the violence, and I think that it's part of the parody, really. And the kind of shocking, it's a Tarantino kind of violence, I think. You know, Tarantino violence never strikes me as, it's more like the situation of the violence is what's disturbing, not the actual gore. So I guess that's what I'm really saying. The gore isn't really, it's so, it isn't like gore. But anyway, I've probably gone on too long about that. So at the end of the day, it's a great show. It's introduced some really new elements. So far, episode 4. As I recall, episode 4 of season 1 is right about the time it started to go downhill. But I don't see that happening with season 3 of The Boys. This is, it's always a good sign when a new season feels more intense than the previous seasons. I feel like that should just sort of be expected. But, you know, we kind of live in a world right now, an entertainment world where diminishing returns is the order of the day. Fortunately, you don't have that problem yet with The Boys. I'll keep an eye on it for you, though, and I'll let you know if it starts to go downhill. But for now, check it out. It's a great superhero show, a great superhero parody, and it really redeemed itself from what I consider to be the flop that was season 2. So, good news all around. All right, well, that is all I got for you today. Please do like and subscribe to the video if you liked what you saw, and make sure to hit that notification bell. And if you listened this long for any reason at all, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I will see you out there.